Last month, the minor opposition Justice Party put forth a comprehensive anti-discrimination bill at the National Assembly. It calls for a ban on all kinds of discrimination, including discrimination based on gender, age, ethnicity, and sexual orientation. Despite similar bills being submitted and discussed since 2007, it has failed to materialise. The strongest opposition has come from influential conservative Christian groups who have raised concerns that the bill infringes upon freedom of expression and freedom of religion. But support for the bill is building, boosted by the National Human Rights Commission of Korea, who publicly endorsed the bill for the first time in 14 years and urged the new parliament to pass it. To delve into the wide spectrum of issues surrounding the envisioned anti-discrimination law, we have two guests in the studio with us today. First, we have Jasmine Lee, who is a Philippine-born naturalized Korean citizen and a former lawmaker. She now chairs the Justice Party's Special Committee on Migrants' Human Rights. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
And we also have with us Associate Professor Sang-hyun from the Department of Global Law at Sungsil University. Welcome to the show, Professor.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay, let me start with you, Ms. Lee. Can you walk us through the anti-discrimination bill proposed by the Justice Party? What is it and how did it come about?
Well, it is literally a law that prohibits discrimination based on 23 grounds. You mentioned a few earlier, gender, disability, age, race, educational background, sexual orientation, and more that may occur actually in, let's say, administrative services, like including the use of essential goods or services such as employment, education, finance, or transportation, even in trial. Now, it is actually to recognize discrimination in our society. It also basically prohibits indirect discrimination and harassment. So, as I have said, it is to recognize discrimination in our society and possibly correct it to create an equal society. It is the basic principle of a democratic society, I would say, equality and not being discriminated upon. Now, the law allows the National Human Rights Commission of Korea to recommend the correction of various discriminatory acts that have been rampant in our society so far, but have not been specifically defined as discrimination. And the important thing is that the law is not a punishment law, but a protection law. So even if there is a discriminatory act prescribed by this law, there is no provision to punish it by criminal law. And the NHRC recommends measures to stop or prevent the recurrence of such discrimination. And of course, the need for this law, as you have mentioned, has been raised ever since, as you have said, 2007. They tried it, but it has been raised by the National Human Rights Commission of Korea since 2006, as stipulated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Human Rights Convention. And of course, the law basically gives victims of discrimination the right to protect themselves and their dignity. And the reason why the Justice Party proposed the bill, former head of the party, Noe Chan, also proposed the bill in the 17th Assembly, and it is one of the main pledges of the Justice Party during the last National Assembly elections.
If I were to just give some blunt examples, maybe like a taxi driver refusing to take someone because of their ethnicity, or someone being fired from a job because someone came out as gay, that would be outlawed. Currently, I understand there's no legal framework to protect individuals from that kind of discrimination.
Indeed.
Is that right?
Indeed.
So we've talked about how this is the seventh in a string of anti-discrimination bills proposed since 2007. Why have the previous attempts failed?
Well, the former presidents Roh Moo-hyun, Lee Myung-bak, and Park Geun-hye had the anti-discrimination legislation in their manifesto, or was included in the national agenda. But in 2007, the government first announced the legislation of a comprehensive anti-discrimination act. However, due to the opposition from political, business, and religious circles, the Ministry of Justice proposed an anti-discrimination bill only after deleting 7 bases like military background, country of origin, language, family type, or situation, history of criminal and protective disposition, including sexual orientation and academic background. Now, as I have mentioned, former head of the Justice Party, Noe Chan, proposed a bill to ban discrimination, but it was automatically scrapped after the expiration of his term in the 17th Assembly. It is the same with the 18th Assembly after Park Eun-seo and Kwon Young-gil. Members of the Assembly, Park Eun-seo and Kwon Young-gil, actually proposed the same bill but it was scrapped because at the end of the 18th. And back in 2012, where I was, during the time that I was in the Assembly, the Unified Progressive Party proposed a bill to ban this, but it was scrapped, of course, again, due to the expiration of the term itself. And but in 2013, 51 lawmakers proposed a bill to ban discrimination, but had to voluntarily withdraw it, citing fierce responses for some conservative Christian groups. Now, there's been some minority opposition, some of them even organized, but some conservative religious groups have been opposing the bill, mainly because of the subject of sexual orientation. Now, however, personally, it is apt to say that the National Assembly had a weaker will to push through the bill in the past rather than because of the opposition. That's a personal opinion of mine. But with the society changing and the rise of the percentage of people acknowledging the need for an anti-discrimination bill, the situation might be different this time on the 21st Assembly.
Professor Lee, let me turn to you now. What have you made of these sorts of anti-discrimination bills? I understand you have some concerns.
Okay. Before answering your question, I would like to address some points of what Ms. Lee's comments. And the first one is there is a labor law with some sanction on the unfair labor practices. So if there is some kind of unfair treatment against some people with some sexual orientation or other some gender, some or disability, it can be some treated by the Ministry of Labor, and then it is the sexual orientation is not only the issue of the conservative Christian group, but also the other group like some school education, some more parenting groups, or other some religious group and civil movement. And then second is there is some other sanctions, not only the some criminal penalty, but also the some administrative charges. They're like maximum $25,000 up to can be imposed on the persons or the groups that actually do not abide by some decision of the National Human Rights Committees up to the point that they fully follow the decision. So it can be cumulative some charges. So it's kind of some sanctions can be imposed by this new law. So if it's enacted, then it can give the superpower on the national human rights decision. And I would like to address your question. My concern is firstly the broad coverage of the general anti-discrimination law. It infringes the individual human rights secured by Constitution of Korea because it only focused, the relatively high focus on the equality rather than the freedom of people's behavior. So it's freedom of speech and the freedom of the behavior, such as making a contract or not, of the private person, and the freedom of religion and the academic freedom can be infringed by this law. We can see easily from the national human rights practices about this anti-discrimination law, because the standards of the discrimination of the general anti-discrimination law is reflected in the Act on the National Human Rights Committee. So maybe from my university, I'm from the Sungshin University, which is a private university established by the Christian group in 2000. 50 after the Korean War. Actually, we received the two orders from the National Human Rights Committees. More than two, but it's requesting to university to revise its the law to adopt it the non-Christian the professors, and also allow the student group to actually show the same-sex marriage the movies. So we have to actually some very under hardship to actually maintain the Christian faith based some operation of the private university.
Okay, so Professor Lee there has laid out a very comprehensive list of concerns there with this bill. Ms. Lee, how would you respond to some of those concerns raised by Professor Lee?
Well, first and foremost, the professor talked about earlier on about, if you are being discriminated upon in work, you have the labor law to actually protect you from it. But, individual laws provide relief for one specific reason, for discrimination. But it should be treated as a comprehensive anti-discrimination law if two or more reasons for discrimination overlap. You are being fired for being gay or for being a sexual minority or for whatever it is. It's a combination of two. Like, you can be asking question, if you're a refugee, you're disabled and you're working, which part of the discrimination will be covered by it? That's the reason why there should be a need for a comprehensive anti-discrimination bill. Now, we have, as you have said, maybe the Commission on I almost forget about the Commission on Human Rights, the Human Rights Commission of Korea, the National Human Rights Commission, might probably be a superpower in this case. But of course, if you actually look at some of the instances outside of the country, even in the U.S., sometimes, the plaintiff can actually contest the decision made by the commission through a judiciary settlement. So it's actually not a superpower of sorts. That's what I believe in. Mm-hmm.
Let me address the
Sure,
points
yes.
to what Ms. Lee comments, and the act also give the the support of the person who petitioned that on the privilege charge, discrimination charge against the any other person or the individual or government officer to the National Human Rights Committee. So the bill allowed the shift of burden of proof, and then it also allowed this the financial support to the petitioner, and also it actually presumed some minimum some damages, monetary damages, which is around the $4,000 I think, so more than that, and then maximum is up to 5 times of the damages that actually injured by the petition, which is I think according to the law, it's the wages or the earnings by the private party. The other party who is in charge of the discrimination. So that is some significant, actually some privilege or some advantage to the plaintiff rather than the defendant. So it's very hard to winning the case. It is kind of some special, some privilege, gives a special privilege
we won't
to
get
the
into too
plaintiff.
much details on individual cases, but basically, I was also curious, how is the situation in other countries? How are anti-discrimination laws put into practice in other countries? For example, I understand South Korea is only one of 2 OECD countries, along with Japan, that doesn't have this comprehensive anti-discrimination law.
Okay, well, many laws have already been enacted in foreign countries that have the characteristics of a general anti-discrimination law, although there are differences in each country's context in terms of like the anti-discrimination reasons or maybe the areas that it covers, but it is a global standard that such laws are enacted these days. Now, the relationship let's say just the relationship between religion and the LGBT community is a complicated one, and everyone experiences it differently. Now, historically, many Orthodox religions have treated LGBTQ people harshly. However, with nearly every religious denomination, there are now supportive groups that have adopted different interpretations. It has already been enacted in the United States and other countries, though it's, as I have said, it might differ in the coverage of the area and the basis. Now, the comprehensive anti-discrimination law, although there is, as I have said, difference between the legal name and the reason for discrimination, it's being enacted in the United States under the Civil Rights Act. And it prohibits discrimination on racial, skin color, ethnic, religious your religious belief and gender. The UK, we have the Equality Act. UK started as a separate bills of itself, separate bills for gender, for age, and everything, and now they actually bind it up for the equality and named it the Equality Act. We also have Canada and Germany, and in addition, a number of other countries, including Australia, Ireland, Austria, New Zealand, and Hong Kong, are implementing comprehensive forms of anti-discrimination laws. For Switzerland, recently, they passed a bill to punish discrimination of sexual minorities by up to 3 years in prison. So, yeah.
Professor Lee, as I mentioned, South Korea is only one of 2 OECD countries that doesn't have an anti-discrimination bill. Is the situation different here in Korea?
Yes, I guess so. In America, and also we actually heard some stories of the executing the anti-discrimination in Western countries. In America, where the state laws against the some the discrimination overall abroad of all categories were held to be some unconstitutional by federal court. Sometimes that states actually imposed some impressively some unfair some treatment or the decision against some people who held them on the strong faith on the hold on to the heterosexual marriages or something. So we can see a lot of cases like florist, bakery operator, photographers, judges, school teachers, public officers who objected to the same-sex marriage before the overage fell, which allowed the same-sex marriage to order same-sex marriage to the overall states in America, received some disciplines or getting fired from their jobs, and only small number of cases actually get some recovery of their the job or some damages, but the overall cases actually failed to recover, and they have to follow the decision of the state human rights committee's decision to follow the and change their attitude to accepted their attitude to against the same-sex marriage. So until they change it, they have to pay some administrative fine. It's similar to the act bill proposed by the Justice Party. So that's the American situation. And then UK also, there's some student who hold on to the conviction that there are only two genders, two sexes, male and female, also was suspended from the attending school for indefinite period of time because the gender is defined as a male and female, and then in unknown gender category, just like some bill proposed by the Justice Party in Korea. So it's that kind of thing is actually some forced the students and then people in private sector, not only the public sector, but also the private sector have to adopt it. That kind of some special some categories of the some area or groups to their own convictions.
I guess the implementation of the law might be problematic in individual cases, but I think for the Justice Party would argue that it's perhaps the principle of anti-discrimination that needs to be put in law. We're running out of time, but as a final thought, Ms. Lee, what needs to be done to pass this bill? Because currently the Justice Party only have 10 lawmakers to supporting the bill at the moment, out of 300, and that's just the minimum threshold to bring this to the National Assembly even. There is talk about the ruling Democratic Party bringing their own anti-discrimination bill. What needs to be done?
Well, actually, it's a good sign. Actually, the United Future Party actually has mentioned something about legislating or drafting in a bill, an anti-discrimination bill of their own. So, as we all know, the National Assembly exists, to make sure that the lives of the people are better. That the lives of the people are better, and with the hopes that a lot of members of the Assembly right now are very much acknowledging the need for an anti-discrimination bill. This probably might be the best time, if ever, to actually push it. As we have said, all human rights should be protected. Of course, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, and all of those freedoms should be protected. But the thing is, there is no hierarchical order amongst them. Human rights are seldom absolute. They are not isolated from one another. So basically, it's all important.
Professor, finally, very briefly, if there's a perhaps watered-down version of the bill, such as something the DP is allegedly proposing, would you be on board with something like that?
I have to see that the version of the new bill, but I think the result will be similar if there is some significant change is on the freedom of speech, or there is exemption of some religious freedom or other behavior, and the rush idea, if badly implemented into law, can cause a lot of some controversies and then infringement of the human rights. Particularly freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of some behavior in private sector as well as the public sector. So it is I think in Korea there is some traditional value to actually some make the some equal position of the gender and female and male, and then there's some proposition that in Korea to protect the some elderly people and the disabled people, but this law actually some push the harsh the some discipline or measure to the person who is in charge of the discrimination imposed by the National Human Rights Committee. So National Human Rights Committee is allegedly in favor of some genderism or some extreme genderism or extreme some some equalism, I think, over the in favor to the some freedom of human rights. So freedom of speech or the other some freedom secured by the Constitution of Korea. So I don't think it's proper to adopt that idea to the law in this moment.
We'll have to wrap it up there, I'm afraid. We've been speaking to Ms. Jasmine Lee from the Justice Party and Professor Sang-hyun from Sang-hyun University. Thank you both for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.